Ah.
選別開始まで残り1日。
Calm before the storm.
静かな朝を迎えていた。
Oh, I can't go. Oh, right. Killua took those.
おはよう。じゃ、最終確認した。
Yes, yes, please.
俺とゴンは突入と同時に中央階段を登って玉座のままで。
Oh god, not that staircase again.
イカルゴは北東側のエレベーターで地下へ降りてパームを探す。うまく発見できたら俺たちに構わず脱出してくれ。
よし。
玉座の間に王と護衛軍3匹がいた場合は
If. That's a big if.
問題は
Ah, yes, Killua.
キルアはそれにこだわってる。
As he should be.
どのくらいの確率だよ、そんな場合って。
まあめったないことだと思うよ。でもそんな稀が結構
Expect the unexpected.
矛盾してるだろうそれって。
But
綿密に相手の行動パターンを調べて今日しかないって日を決めるだろう。何時には必ずここにいるって時に合わせて待ってるとお互いにとって
and he's got experience in this, right? Killua Zoldyck, former assassin.
めったにないことがその日に限ってよく起こるってパターンがね。前の仕事なら次に伸ばせばよかった。
This is a bit different.
に仕留められる次の機会までね。けど今回は違う。
The expertise, the confidence. Look at
動き
this.
出したら後には戻れない。だから今から考えておくんだ。ありとあらゆる場合は。
Perfect. Oh, that's perfect.
もしも玉座の間に奴らがいなくても宮殿内部にいるなら問題はない。
It's so authentic, isn't
ピ
it?
トーの円は宮殿全体と庭園を包んでもあまりある面積をカバーしてる。つまり俺たちが突入した瞬間に
A reminder of the creepy
超
aura.
不気味なオーラを感じ取れたら奴らは宮殿内にいるってことだ。
Simple enough, right? Unmissable, I
そ
suppose.
のまがまがしさの濃い方へ向かっていけばその中心に奴がいる。問題なのはピトーのオーラを感じられない場合、つまり
Asking all the right
宮殿内
questions.
にいない場合、もしくは宮殿内にいてもなぜか円を使ってない場合。
That's the really key
宮
one.
殿の中にいて王を守るための縁をしない場合。
It happened already.
それがあったんだって。ノブさんが宮殿に侵入した時。
Incredible stroke of luck, of
そ
course.
れが一番不可解。コルトによると、ノブが
Oh,
見た
Colt.
ってやつのオーラ。なのに、なぜピトー
Oh
は
my
人形の円も
god.
含めて
Look at
警
this.
備をプフに任せ、結果ノブの侵入を許してしまった。
Come on, come on, you'll get there. Come on.
やつの能力に関係することだと思うんだがな。
じゃあそれもコルトに聞いてみようよ。
だな。
Oh, I'm about to get a bit more than,
お
eh?
そらくその時、ピトーは誰かの治療を
Look
して
at
いる。
this.
治療？
カイトを修復したのはピトーだってことは前に言っただろう。
Oh,
今思うと、治療の間奴は円を使っていた気
あ
がする。
key insight.
修復には相当の集中力がいるってことだろう。
Oh, that's
修
lovely,
復の
man.
能力を使う場合、その間は円や人形は使えない。
Come on.
これで納得だ。あの時誰かが、おそらく王か他の護衛軍かが負傷して、
Oh my
そ
god,
の
look
治
at
療の
this.
ため一時円と人形を引っ込めた。
いや、けどよ、誰が怪我させられるんだよ。この怪物たちの誰かをよ。
Really good point.
確かに王が護衛軍の誰かを怪我させたとか。
いや、やっぱりありえねえよ。あのピトーが王を危険にさらしてまで縁を解いて他のやつを治療するなんて。
Oh, again, key
100%
insight.
ない。そこは断言するぜ。
ってことは、怪我したのは
王自身。
Breakthrough.
だが一番消せねえのは、じゃあ誰が王ってことだ。護衛軍がやるわけねえだろ。かといって他の下っ端じゃ。
There's only one conclusion from that.
だから俺たちの結論は。
王が自分は
Yes, boys.
どんな状況だよ。
Any Coco.
俺たちだってわかんないけど、そうなるんだもん。
That was beautiful. Love that scene.
突然の好機に喜んで深くは考えなかったが。
Yeah, incredibly
その
lucky,
くら
yeah.
い異常な事態が起きなければなかったチャンスと言っていい。あっちで何かが狂ってきている。
There's an unknown factor at play now, from their perspective
だ
at
と
least.
俺も何かが起こる気がしてきたぜ。
At least they know there is something at play.
我々にとって最も怖いのは王が我々の目の
Ooh, oh my god, look at this. Dialed in. As expected.
物質移動ができる能力者がいると仮定してそいつによって王だけが全く別の場所へ強制移動させられてしまう場合、選別中でも3人のうち最低1人は王のそばにいなければなりませんね。
王が許さない。ただでさえ最近
俺たちが近くに過ぎると煙たがるし、つかず離れず王の周囲に気を配りながら
Who's it gonna be?
自らも迅速に選別を遂行しなければ体がでかくて嫌でも目立つ。自分が楽しいと夢中になってしまうタイプ。わかりました。
Oh my god.
私が適任なわけですね。消去法。それだけのこと。
I'm not sure about you guys, but I found that really funny.
奴らの気配が完全に消えたにゃ。
Oh,
オーラの残りかすが
apartment complex, right? That's the unknown though for them.
鉄を使い人民の行列に紛れ込んだ。
The natural conclusion, of course, but that's not the case, is it? This is so exciting. That is so clutch. Nov's ability, it's just incredible.
宮殿の穴につながっている部屋の入り口は周辺に6つ。護衛軍の監視が厳しくなるであろう前方は避けて、後方の A、B、C あたり
Through the rear.
その入り口から部屋に入ったらもう俺たちは宮殿内部の出口からしか出られないんだよな。かといってあまりに早く部屋に入ったら
Oh,
レイジ
yeah.
が外に出られない。
確かに
Almost become
せっかく有
blind.
力な情報が入ってもこちらが対応可能な状況になきゃ意味がない。
A lot of that could be at play, right?
アリの電波に引っかかるから宮殿近くでは使えないしな。
Oh, so yeah, they're truly going to be
どんなアクシ
blind
デ
then.
ントが起きて状況が変化するかわからないのに何時間も部屋で待機するのは危険だと思うぞ。
Good point, man. Really good point.
護衛軍の警戒網はなめねえ方がいいぜ。
俺がやろう。このマンションのあらゆる出入り口から
My god, his voice.
できるのは俺だけ。異常があれば知らせよう。
Oh my
お
god.
前たちはまずこの部屋で休め。
That's a broken man.
だがくれぐれも気をつけろよ。
Ah,
ピトは通常の丸い円ではなく、
right. She's got a really
アメーバみ
unique
たい
one,
に
yeah?
形を変えてより遠くまで探れる。
Man, Nov Sensei though.
カイトはそれに触れた。
触れたのはわざとだろうな。どれほどの強さか知りたく
Oh man.
戦う者の本能だ。
本能に誘われて見誤ったんだよ。
And then it was too late.
奴らの強さをな。
絶対に触るなよ。
心配するな。この中で誰よりも俺が奴らを恐れている。
Complete acceptance. No bravado. False bravado. Wow.
決してな。
Yeah. He's been subjected to immense anxiety and stress, PTSD, Marie Antoinette syndrome, right? A really extreme and almost exaggerated case of it, but I believe that's the condition here. Wow. But you know, he's doing his best.
貴様、小麦が襲われているのを知っていた。
Ooh.
は、王に危害は及ばないものと判断し、放置しました。
Oh, he's gonna ask her.
小麦の周囲も
Treat her like me.
何かあればすぐ対処しろ。
は、仰せのままに。
Oh, yet another unknown now for the other side. That reaction. But immediately, as you command. Hang in there, man. Hang in there.
いや、レミングス。新行進か。もうすぐ夕闇が周囲を覆い隠す。
Wow. He's so strained. The voice itself. And the eyes. Look at that.
あれは。
Whoa.
なんだ。
Oh, okay. I thought I was about to say something else.
鱗粉全員の表情が一緒。
Crowd control. Pest control, I suppose.
あの粉に催眠作用があるに違いない。
Hypnotic effect, eh? Ugh.
暗示をかけるのに絶好の環境だ。
Oh,
選別が始まり、鮮血が周囲を赤く染めて。
that's beautiful stuff, though. Look at
彼は
that.
おとなしく静かに立ち続けるだろう。
He's got the right idea.
催眠か。なるほど。
あと6時
Oh my god. This, honestly, this is, oh my god, look at this. The whole squad is
全
here.
員揃ったな。
パームから連絡あった？
いや、
Immediate concern.
中の様子がわかるか否かじゃ大違いだからな。
Yeah, that could be a game changer.
2人とも落ち着いて
Nice. Go on, shoot.
特にキルアは
Exactly.
俺と戦った時の精神的な弱さはない。
You see this in the beginning scene as
全身に
well.
自信がみなぎっている。だが なぜだろう。彼が時折消え入りそうに儚く見えるの。いや、人の心配をしている余裕はない。この中で最も不安を抱えている。
He almost forgot about his anxiety. Oh, I love this. I asked for this, didn't I?
いいやつだ。メレオロンもイカルゴもいいハートを持ってる。
Yes, they do.
人とかアリとか関係ねえ。ハートがねえやつなんていいね。
Maybe even the royal guards? The king?
できれば王とも。
カイト、もうすぐだよ。
Oh, I love this approach so much.
必ず元に戻すから。あいつを倒して。気合入ってきたな。俺はフォローに徹するぜ。お前の戦いに誰も邪魔が入らないよ。
He wants that for himself, right? Ooh.
体が重い。やはり連日の無理がたまってるな。
Yeah. How realistic.
絶好調を100とするなら40。いや、35ってとこか。
I mean, he's still a beast at that, but...
泣き言言っても始まらん。ノブが折れた今、俺しかいない。
And Nov knows that. He understands that too.
全力で戦いたかったが、下手に余力がない分、諦めもつくってもんだ。
He's being really quite realistic right now. I love this. The transitions to the next.
みんなどうしても立ち向かい
He's still doing his part.
宮殿の様子を見てくる。
Oh. You know, he's got privileges that they didn't have, so he can still help out. But see, in the field, anything can happen, and but it could be even less than that. A split second, something could happen.
いよいよ明日0時。俺は生まれ変わる。
Come on, Nicole, let's go.
数日前までこんな生き方考えられなかった。キルがありがとう。お前のためにも任務は必ず全うする。
The gratitude, though.
明日が俺の誕
A
生日。
rebirth. How about that? I love the fluorescent lighting in there. It really allows for really unique color design. You can see the green, you know, Gon's green looks a little bit different in there. Even the skin tones. There's Montuta Yuppie.
要は王だ。
Yes, you are, Medwin. Yes, you are.
だが要は何者。
Yes. Come on.
要は一体何のために生まれてきた。
Asking all the right questions.
タイムアップだ。行くぞ。
Oh, yes. Oh, see? Look at this. Beautiful shading. The use of shadows in there. Oh my god, this is it?
パーム。
Oh my god. And that leaves
入まであと10分。
10 minutes. Oh god. But yeah, and that leaves the chairman. Okay, episode 109. Listen, I know you might be getting sick of me saying this, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe many of you are really quite excited that, it's having this impact on me. I've got to say, that's one of the better episodes of the arc at this point. That's one of the standouts. I mean, that is such a satisfying and pleasing or gratifying episode. Togashi makes a choice to take this approach in perhaps one of the better or one of the best table setting episodes I've seen in a long time, right? Or in recent memory, at least. The Calm Before the Storm episode. Honestly, this is just an incredible episode. And like I said, just thoroughly satisfying. And, essentially, the larger real life Gungi board is set at this point, right? The stage is set at this point. And this is in preparation for the final game, right? I suppose I should say, the players are stacked, the pieces are stacked. This episode right here is one of the most important episodes before, this monumental operation, these encounters begin to take place, right? Because it chooses to, or Togashi chooses to focus on their mental state, right? Checking in. Right? Maybe not quite on the other side, yes, of course. I got a major moment right at the conclusion there with our King Meruem, right? And of course, I'll touch up on it, but perhaps the Royal Guards might get this kind of moment, this kind of focus once it all kind of takes off. Hopefully, hopefully something like that can still come in, because I feel like these encounters, and once the stakes are at an all-time high, that's around the time that even the Royal Guards could begin to really contemplate some of these things, right? I mean, it's already at play, especially in the last episode as well, and more, a bit more of that in this episode. But of course, the major focus of this episode is certainly on the extermination squad. I mean, I can only really give you my opinion on the matter. I'm not really sure how others look at this episode. Listen, I'm sure, for some, it's not the greatest episode. It's not the most exciting episode. But for some, I'm sure there's many of you out there that are really quite similar to me, that, found this episode to be really quite gripping. I mean, I really think it's an enthralling episode. It really is, beat by beat, near perfection, like I said a little bit earlier. There's maybe one or two things that I could have used perhaps in this episode, and I'll touch up on it. But for the most part, it's just an airtight episode. And I feel like taking this type of approach and giving it the time, it really just kind of heightens it even more, doesn't it? The high stakes nature of it, the monumental nature of the stuff that's about to play out over the next 48 or 72 hours, or maybe longer, or maybe shorter. I'm not sure how long it's actually going to take to play out. I really felt that by the end of this episode, I've been brought to the precipice of something incredible, right? And I feel like the characters themselves, the key players, the major players, the principal cast of this portion of the arc feel the same. And the thing is, I actually kind of hoped for this, right? A couple of episodes ago, I asked for something like this. I was hopeful for something like this, right? Focusing on some of these other characters and their own, internal thoughts, internal monologues, right? I think I name dropped Palm, Knuckle, and Shoot, right? Still no sign of Palm just yet, but it appears that I'll find out soon enough, right? If it call goes successful. My God, I'm just getting so excited. There's that portion in the beginning of the episode, right? Killua, Ikalgo, and Gon. That is one of the great moments of this arc, especially for Killua Zoldyck. And of course, I'll focus on the scene in much more detail. But, I just kind of want to touch upon that aspect of it, that it's not as simple as, okay, this is our plan. This is it. Simple as that. Execute the plan. No. These are competent, believable characters. And that's, applicable to many of them, right? But in this case, Killua Zoldyck, right? In that scene. Right, they're thinking about plan B, plan C, contingencies, what if situations, right? Expect the unexpected, Murphy's Law, all of that, right? So I think another thing this episode does really quite effectively is, really once again ground these fantastic characters as really quite believable, right? And they understand the stakes, right? There's no false bravado. Of course, it's really quite sad to see Nov Sensei in this state. It is. I feel for him, but it's kind of out in the open. He's not trying to, pretend. Moral's not trying to pretend. He's really quite supportive, actually, of Nov Sensei, right? He's concerned about his, mental state, and how things could possibly play out if he is to, get caught up in that end again, right? To experience that aura again. Right now, it's quite the contrast from his, initial take on Killua. But, now that I have much more on Moral Sensei, I'm beginning to call him Sensei as well. But yeah, the more you get to see of Moral, the more you kind of get to understand that, okay, even if at first it appeared to be harsh, right, his approach with Killua, he is trying to help him as well, right? He's the type of person, I've seen enough of him at this point now. So let's focus on, one of the last few scenes of that episode, right? Now, listen, I know it might begin to sound repetitive, but I've got to tell you, that right there is one of the standout scenes as well, for me at least, right? And I'm speaking of, all of them being inside of that room, the apartment complex, right? Nov Sensei's apartment complex rooms. Now, it's insane to think that it's at this point now, all of these characters have come together, including two from the other side, right? Chimera Ants, Ikalgo and Melioron, right? Now, before I forget, that's maybe one aspect of it that I could have maybe used a bit more, right? These two defected, essentially, right? Just, at the basic level, at the most base level, they defected, right? Now they find themselves allied with humans, right? That are, essentially trying to take out the Chimera Ant King, right? Ultimately, at least, I suppose the final boss and all of that. But of course, there's other things that have to be handled as well. I mean, I say handled, it's easier said than done. The three royal guards, you don't just handle them, right? But of course, I'm sure there's some incredible stuff ahead of me. But, the thing I really could have used out of this episode, and the one glaring omission, I suppose, for me at least, is that, I didn't get a quick scene even. It could have been really a quick one of Ikalgo and Melioron just speaking to each other, right? Just kind of commenting on the situation, the really unique situation they find themselves in, right? And that could have been a great scene, man, because, beyond this point, it's going to be tough. I'm not going to get that type of moment, that type of time for them to actually, kind of hang back and really kind of talk about the situation they find themselves in and the trajectory that they're headed towards and the things that they've committed to. Right. So that really could have been a great scene. I was really, really hoping for it. And I was actually internally really quite excited, right? Because the signs are there that it might actually even have that type of scene because it's giving me these, check-ins. I mean, I did get a quick shot of them just kind of talking to each other, but, I couldn't actually listen in on it. Right. But going back to my point about all of them being inside of that room, once upon a time, around the time Nov Sensei and Moral and Netero, the chairman, show up in the NGL, right, and begin their recon mission or operation. Remember I speculated, imagine if you could actually get all of them in there and then, a bunch of them just spring out, a surprise attack, get the jump on them. All this time later, episodes later, I mean, not episodes, I think I'm looking at like 15 plus episodes at this point, right? Maybe, yeah. That's the exact thing that's about to happen here. And it's just so incredibly exciting. I feel like I'm really, really quite dialed in to everything that Togashi is trying to, put out there for us, the audience, to, pick up on, to engage with, to enjoy. And that's why I find it so damn enjoyable. I'm really in tune with it at this point, I believe, at least. But, going back to the scene itself and, my reasoning for it being one of the standouts of the arc so far and my own personal favorites is because, how it checks in with everyone inside of that room, right? At this point in time, at this crucial point in time, right? I mean, by the end of it, you've got the narrator telling us there's only 10 minutes. 10 minutes. But yeah, I loved how it kind of circles through all of them in there, right? And of course, there's those beautiful focus pulls as it transitions to the next person and their own internal thoughts as they contemplate motives and reiterate those motives as they're being torn, right? As they're being conflicted. You see, Knuckles specifically is really, really quite conflicted at this point, as expected, of course, of his character or someone of his character. You've got insight on fellow squad members, and of course the standout being Shu, really assessing Gon and Killua at this point in time, right? And of course his assessment really kind of focuses or zeroes in on Killua specifically, right? His really confident nature, yet he also felt that Killua is perhaps about to fade, kind of like a shining star at the end of its line, right? A lot of interesting insight, but then of course you had to kind of reel it back in and really think about himself as well. And, within these internal monologues or reflection at this point in time, you've even got gratitude, right? And in Kalgo's case, a chance at a new start, a new beginning, right? A rebirth even, according to him, a changing of trajectories from this point on. And if all of that isn't enough already, there's still that unknown of the chairman, right? Netero, and his re-entry into this arc. Both us, the audience, and the characters have not heard from Netero for, a decent amount of time at this point. Or actually, maybe I'm about to say that maybe, they are in contact behind the scenes. They kind of have to update him about some of the, new additions, perhaps, Kalgo and Melioron, the role they're about to play in this and how things change. But then, a few episodes ago, they also confirmed, Knuckle, I believe, confirmed that, at this point, there's no more contact with the chairman, right? He's got to do his thing. Right? He's got to do his thing. So I think it's safe to assume at this point that, Moral's kind of taking that position of, okay, let's run it by him. Let's run it by the one that's got the most authority and experience at this point, and that's another factor at play here, and of course, Nov Sensei feels terrible about it. He knows the pressure that he's putting on, or he has put on Moral now, that he has to, sit this out. I mean, listen, he's still doing his best. He's still trying to do his best. He's playing his part. He's doing recon, and that is going to be really quite useful, right? And I'm really quite excited to see how he continues to contribute to this, to the operation itself. But yeah, this it's a shocking sight, isn't it? To see him in this state, Nov Sensei, that is. But also speaking of current state, or physical state specifically, in Moral's case, he believes that he's at 35%, right? And it makes sense, right? It finally added up, those back-to-back encounters with really, competent, Chimera ants, right? Taxing, at least, as far as, aura or Nen output is concerned. And of course, he's also been deploying his own shadow puppets or soldiers as well, and keeping that up. So yeah, it's kind of caught up to him. 35%. Yeah, that's, and there's this sense of acceptance. There's a lot of acceptance there, actually, on Nov Sensei's part, Moral's part, and many of the other characters as well. Hell, the thing is, Gon appeared to be the only one who didn't really, Killua as well, right? He's really quite confident in this moment and his support role for Gon, as he, looks to debut another, ability. And I'm sure it's meant to be something really quite spectacular, but Gon specifically, out of all of them, I'd say, is the one who's kind of feeling the stakes of it the least, the high stakes of it the least, because he's so dialed in. He's got tunnel vision. He knows the motive, right? He's got his motive really quite clear ahead of him, right? I'm going to bring you back, Kite, by defeating that Chimera ant. And, this point I am making about the high stakes nature of it, and maybe Gon not feeling it as much as the others, that's another reason I call this such a grounded, reiteration of these characters in this episode, right? You see that, many of them are, a little bit afraid, a little bit concerned, a little bit on edge before going into this, as they should be, because that's the situation at hand. Right? That's realistic to me. It really is. You could easily see perhaps in another anime or another story altogether, that everyone's just really pumped up, really fired up. Let's go. Let's embrace it. Let's face it. This right here is a really, grounded take on it, I think. The thing I really enjoyed about this episode, one of the things rather, and, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is just how competent these characters are. Right? Because, there's information that's there that they should be, picking apart and should be kind of, understanding the connotations of and reaching certain conclusions as they do, as Killua Zoldyck does, right? One of the things I find most annoying and immersion breaking in a lot of stories is that, some of the characters should be picking up on some of this information, some of the information that's out there. It's in the open. Like it's a logical, step for them to understand or at least engage with certain information, right? Yet they don't do it, right? It just makes them look so dumb. And again, it's immersion breaking because us as audience members know that this information is out there now, right? It's out there for us, but sometimes maybe it is just for us, right? Dramatic irony and all of that, but in this case, or in many cases, sometimes that information is out there for the characters as well, and they should be engaging with it. And I got such a brilliant scene of characters engaging, right? Bringing others' experiences into it and, gaining insight and then filling in the blanks, right? Logically coming to a conclusion. And this brings me to the top of the episode, to that cabin as Ikalgo wakes up to Gon and Killua, right? Already at it. Now, this right here is a showcase for Killua Zoldyck, in my opinion, at least. Yes, there's a lot of input from Gon and Ikalgo, and that's really quite crucial in this, right? In helping Killua also figure this out. But, in terms of a showcase, I don't mean that, he's outshining them. It's more so about just, the journey he's been on. And at this point in time, he is just so sure of himself, so confident in that moment. But throughout that scene, look at how attentive both Gon and Ikalgo are, right? They are just dialed in. They're listening to Killua. My God, you see in this scene that, this kid, Killua Zoldyck, has immense leadership qualities, right? He's got presence. He can hold an audience. Hell, like I said, he should be speaking to all of them at the same time. And it would not be out of place for him to be speaking to people like Moral and, presenting this information. And once again, you really get to see why exactly, the Zoldycks, or, perhaps in this case, specifically Silva and perhaps Zeno, they chose Killua as the next in line, as the one to take over, the family legacy and all of that, right? It makes complete sense. I mean, my goodness, this kid is so damn impressive, right? And of course, I keep saying Killua Zoldyck because, that's still a big part of his identity and his life, right? Being an assassin, he calls it his last job or his former job, but the experiences that he's had as an assassin, as a pro assassin, right? And the infield experiences that he's had, they really, really play a part here, and they've played a part already in other things, but here, for sure, he understands that expecting something to play out exactly as you hope for it to play out is a fool's errand, right? You've got to have backup plans, contingencies. You simply do. Otherwise, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot. It's a suicide mission. But of course, like he specified in this case, it's not as easy as, retreating and then coming at it from a different angle. Now, at the beginning of this, incredible, brainstorming session and back and forth, it's as simple as, Togashi is letting us, the audience, know the plan through conversation. Them just kind of, locking in, checking in one final time. So it's a great approach to begin with anyways. But yeah, the plan is that once they're inside, both Gon and Killua immediately head up the staircase. And once again, I got this ominous shot of that staircase, man. It just, that staircase is so effective, right? I mean, I think I called it terrifying a couple of episodes ago, right around the time Nov Sensei sees it. Yeah, it's really damn effective, isn't it? You'll have to let me know if others have the same experience, because I honestly feel really uneasy anytime I see that staircase, and I feel like it is by design. And then of course, Ikalgo is meant to take the northeast elevator, right, down to the basement and search for Palm. Now, there's a bit of a speed bump there as well. Palm doesn't know about this, right? So if indeed Palm is still around somehow, I mean, I don't know how exactly she survived that situation or could get away from that situation, but if she did, and if Ikalgo comes across her, Ikalgo's going to have to explain, right? And there's just not that much time, so it'll be interesting. Now, that's a really unlikely scenario because I just don't think Palm is going to be down there. But if she is down there somehow still, then there's got to be a really fascinating explanation for this. I mean, there simply has to be. There must be. If that is the case. And Ikalgo's been told that if you do come across her, you've got to get out of there. That's your mission at the moment. So his really standout ability, taking a host, it's not really mentioned here, right? But, maybe it could still be at play. And this whole plan depends on the royal guards and the king himself, Meruem, being there. Right? And from this point on, you get the what if situations, right? What if they're not in the throne room? But yeah, at this point, Killua begins to share his expertise, right? As a former assassin, as a former professional assassin, in my old job, I saw a lot of these things happen, that the unusual always ends up happening on the day you've chosen. I mean, it's just such a beautiful moment, isn't it? To see him speak with such confidence and, expertise. So the next phase of this becomes Neferpito's end, right? Because even if they don't end up being in the throne room, it's okay, as long as they're in the palace. And of course, how do you really kind of gauge or figure out that they're in the palace? It's an instant thing, isn't it? Because of course, if you're feeling that end, that sinister aura, that creepy aura, I think you referred to it as creepy at one point, then of course, it's clear, okay, they're around, and you just kind of have to follow that, even though, it's just this incredibly jarring thought to someone like Nov Sensei, right? And, it's represented in one of his, or one of the mental images that he had, during his breakdown of Gon and Killua heading towards Neferpito's end, right? And it looks like it is going to take place again. They are going to head towards it. That's part of the plan, essentially, right? To almost kind of follow the breadcrumb. It's not a tough one to follow, of course, but I think he specified that you've got to get to the densest point of it, and at the middle of that is going to be the king. But here comes the unknown, because at this point, the king has officially specified to Neferpito that from now on, monitor her surroundings, right? And deal with any threats at once. And of course, it gets a subtle reaction out of Neferpito, right? Of course, it's a bit of a surprising one, the order itself. Perhaps maybe not that surprising, but, him actually making it official, yeah, that's something different than, just kind of noticing his changing demeanor from day to day in her presence, right? Again, her influence. being a key component of it. But, as expected, Neferpito, she accepted the command, right? Because again, at the end of the day, it's all about following the king and, following his orders and making sure that he's at his happiest, right? Neferpito certainly feels like someone who'd follow the king into anything, right? Anything. He could get up the next day and be like, I just want to paint, and I just want to, learn about painting. I really truly feel that Neferpito would do her best to facilitate that. So the reason I mentioned this, or, the reason I felt the need to bring that scene in now is because, okay, say that is the case and they do follow Neferpito's end. What if at the middle of it is not Meruem and it ends up being Komogi? But yeah, let's kind of go back and look at the next question, right? So what if they are in the palace, but they aren't using N, right? Again, a really logical question to have, right? The subsequent question, that is. And of course, Gon jumps in, chimes in, and brings up the fact that that's exactly how it played out for Nov Sensei, right? He was able to, infiltrate because of that. And, in this episode, they really truly understand, you see Moral Sensei mention a little bit later, that they got incredibly lucky that even happened, right? They, like the narrator mentioned in that episode, Nav has no idea that this is truly the one and final chance that they have, right? And, ultimately he is able to be successful, right? He executed, even if he was shattered at that point, mentally at least. And he continues to be shattered mentally, but he's holding up. He's trying his best. I'll touch up on that in a bit. And at this point, it becomes really quite juicy because, they're asking really important questions that lead to the answer ultimately, right? And it also brings in a fantastic cameo, for the homie Colt, and not just Colt, the queen's final child, who's really growing up quite a bit. Last I saw this kid, it was a tiny little, smaller than a palm-sized baby. But it's such a beautiful sight to see that little child just playing, the toys. Again, there's a lot of stuffed animals around. So yeah, it's a lovely check-in with Colt and the last child that he's promised to take care of for the rest of his life, essentially. But you gain a lot of insight through Colt, and then of course Ikago as well a little bit later on, right? The Chimera Ant insight, right? Colt lets him know that, okay, if she's using her healing ability, she cannot be using her N. And then, of course, Colt's got another example to draw from, right? Around the time she's beginning to heal Kite, right? I think he said, I believe she wasn't using N at that point, right? Because a lot of it had to be dedicated to that, that activity of reanimating Kite, right? Or fixing Kite. So, perfect example to draw from and apply to this situation and get like an immediate answer too. So I love that. I love that aspect of it, right? It's not just like a superfluous cameo. It made sense, and it also gave us, a good feeling to see Colt and the child again. And also, he essentially officially confirms that indeed that was FILMBuFF's aura, right? Us, the audience, knows that, but it's still good to kind of have an official confirmation for that, right? But the reason I bring that up is because now they know that if it was FILMBuFF's and at play at that specific point in time, she was busy, right? She wasn't able to use her N. And then, of course, the dominoes keep falling, and the next question becomes, okay, so who exactly needed the healing, right? It must have been, the king or one of the royal guards. And then, of course, Ikago interjects and provides a bit of insight and, simply just tells him, listen, who's going to be able to injure any of those monsters, referring to royal guards. He also follows up by mentioning that, okay, there's no chance in hell that Neferpito could retract her N, right, to heal someone else, right, and put the king at risk. No chance in hell. Then, of course, the next piece of the puzzle or the next question becomes really quite clear as well. Or rather, it actually ends up leading to the breakthrough moment. Killua figures out that it had to be the king, right? It simply had to be the king then. Everything just adds up. That's the only possibility in this case, right? But then, another big question. Who could possibly injure the king, right? the royal guards are not going to be injuring the king, right? That's quite the opposite of their duty. They're duty bound, they're honor bound to protect their king, right? And this is a king that does not really want them to be close to him at all times. So the royal guards are also in a bit of a tricky position because they have to, guard someone that doesn't really want to be guarded, doesn't really want them to be around all that much. So of course, they have to be clever about it. And of course, they arrive at the conclusion that indeed it must have been the king who injured himself, right? Moral immediately questions, just the reasoning behind that, why exactly something like that could happen because of abnormal circumstances, right? So now they know that there is something that is a bit of an unknown. There is something that's going on inside of the palace, right? That they have no idea of knowing, right? Or sorry, not no idea, no chance of knowing at this point until they actually do see the unknown. And there's a good chance that's going to end up happening as well, right? They are going to see Komugi in there in the palace, and it'll be interesting to see how they approach that situation and just their thoughts on the situation itself. Because listen, yes, I'm sure these encounters, the fights themselves, the abilities, the incredible abilities at play. You look at Knuckles, Shoot, Melioron, Ikalgo, Shalapoof, Neferpito, it goes on and on. I'm sure, I'll get this incredible showcase and just these incredible encounters. But also, one of the things I'm most excited about is the impact these encounters are going to have on these characters, right? Mentally. But, if you shift the focus to the other side, the royal guards, they're quite dialed in as well. They pick up on this notion, or they understand that, the greatest concern is that the king somehow becomes isolated, right? Somehow gets taken beyond their reach, right? That's their ultimate concern at this point, right? So it's incredible to see how dialed in everyone is. And, as an audience member, it's just really satisfying to watch, isn't it? Right? That these characters, these really competent characters, are picking up on everything that they should be picking up on, and they're not being dumbed down just for the sake of the plot. But let's shift the focus back to the room itself, Nav Sensei's apartment complex room, and his re-entry into the arc. After taking, a few episodes off, I suppose. I mean, he's suited and ready to assist the best he can, right? But yeah, it's like I said, like I touched up on a little bit earlier, it's a jarring sight, isn't it? I believe it's called Marie Antoinette syndrome, right? It's not something I've really looked into all that much, but I know that it's kind of that's meant to be one of the terms for it, right? Now, his hair actually entirely just shifting color or changing color, due to the shock and the, immense anxiety and stress. It would be essentially the future hair growth that would be affected, not, all of his hair at this point in time, right, to be affected in that manner. But, it's more so for show, to really show, to visually show how it affected him. But yeah, in terms of his condition, you see that there's certainly a lack of sleep, right? Like I said, immense anxiety and stress, constant stress, perhaps. A reminder, he's dealing with PTSD at this point. He really is. And like I said, no false bravado. He tells him straight up, in this room, I'm the one who fears them the most. Trust me, I'm not going to do anything silly. I'm not it's more so, I don't even have the courage to try something silly, or something grand, or be a major part of this. And even the way he speaks, you see that it's almost a strain to speak, to get anything out, isn't it? Right? It's more somber and subdued at this point. The cadence of his voice, in comparison to the really self-assured and confident tone of his voice before any of this took place. And then finally, that brings me back to King Meruem as he contemplates, right? And these are the questions that I hoped for, and I'm getting those questions. I am the king, but who am I really, right? His identity as a person. Why exactly was I brought into this world? I mean, that journey of self-discovery has commenced at this point. And, at this point, it appears that he's already kind of at the beginning stages, on the road to the reconstruction phase. I mean, at this point, he is actively engaging and embracing aspects of his inner psyche. But of course, just as, these breakthrough moments are beginning to happen, just as this journey of self-discovery is taking off, his nemesis is going to show up soon enough. So how exactly is that going to affect this journey of self-discovery, right? And of course, by nemesis, I do mean the chairman himself, right? So let's end off there. I'm sure once a chairman, you know, re-enters, it's going to be something epic, right? You know, I think they specified from beyond Neferpito's end, right? And then of course there's still the unknown, right? I'm doing air quotes. There's the unknown of his acquaintance, right? As you know, I feel like I have a strong idea of who that might be. So, you know, that could be even more epic, right? But yeah, I've got to say, it's a phenomenal episode, at least for me. Enthralling. It really is. Perfect setup. The perfect table setting episode for the things to come. And yeah, I really enjoyed that one, folks. And I really enjoyed discussing it as well. I had a lot of fun. I did. So if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or timer-based full length or full opacity, consider checking out the Patreon page and potentially supporting the channel as well. Links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 110. Until then, take it easy.